Welcome to the SoapBox interview. I'm Matt Skeetsa, and today I'm with James Marter. James, how are you?
Matt, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Can you tell the folks out there a little bit about yourself and also the congressional district you're running in?
So I live in Oswego. That's where my wife and I have raised our 4 children. They're all grown up now. We have 3 grandchildren. 3 of our 4 children are still not only in the state, but live in the district. So we're blessed to have them nearby. I've been in politics here just a little bit. You know, I'm kind of a newbie to it, 6 years now. 53 years of my life, I was mostly not part of the whole political scene. And, you know, I started out as, in high school and as a teenager, cross country, track, swimming, became a swimming teacher, swim instructor, lifeguard, swim coach, kind of my first career, if you will, and I really enjoyed it, especially the working with one of my high school colleagues to swimmers to found a swim team at a place where we both worked at as lifeguards and swimming instructors, and set that into motion. And here it is 40 some years later, and it's still out there, it's still running, so we're kind of proud of that accomplishment. Got to do that again later in life for a USA swim team and coach, and that kind of, that was first foray into politics a little bit there, and decided it wasn't really for me at the time. And 20 years later, here in Illinois, and I've came back to Illinois with my wife about 1997. We were in Michigan for about 12 years, and from that point worked in the software consulting business. So I do some travel, not nearly as much as I used to, but the opportunity to work and travel for companies all around the world, work in various industries, everything from the agricultural business, farming communities, and to foundries which make metal products, steel, the whole industry where we're looking at heavy manufacturing to automotive manufacturing, chemical process industries, life science companies. So I've had an opportunity to work in virtually every major industry sector that we have, work for both medium-sized companies that are 100 million to 2 billion type size, to some of the Fortune 100 companies, and in fact some of the Fortune 25 companies. So working across the spectrum with people around the world literally every day, opportunities to travel around the world for work, not on pleasure. So, but crossing the border in McAllen, Texas, into Reynosa in Mexico, from Eagle Pass, Texas, into Piedras Negras there. Worked at a client where I flew into Mexico City, traveled north into the mountain town of Sagun, and that's where the factory was. Flew into Sao Paulo, and again, all these places I went, especially the Central and South American, you had to have work permits and visas to get in, so you do things the right way, but get to work with the people from around the world and get to know them. And so while I was doing that here in Illinois, in the town of Oswego, on my weekends and other things, I was a scout leader for 15 years in Illinois, 2 years in Michigan. My oldest son's an Eagle Scout, very proud of his accomplishments there. All 3 of my sons went through it, and then I was in and around scouting for many years even after that. But it's just and it's kind of an honor and a privilege to be with good people in an organization where we're trying to teach our youth our values, our freedom, what our country and our foundations are based on. So those are some of the things that kind of about me that I've been working on and been doing these last many years. And like I said, newbie to politics. 6 years ago, after my kids are grown up and they're out, I get involved in a local race, and next thing you know, I'm running against some of the worst actors in the Illinois Republican Party. That would be Mark Kirk, if you don't know who that is. And then shortly after that, Adam Kinzinger. But because of let's say, my success in at least those ventures, I became the Republican Party chairman in my own county, been twice elected to that position, and been working very hard locally to kind of set things right, get our good Republicans elected. Last 2.5 years, 13 new Republican office holders, while counties around us have been, kind of clobbered from that blue wave, supposedly. And, we were able to defend seats, not only defend them, but win Republican office holders back. So doing a lot of stuff, it kind of, across the spectrum there.
So what is the district you're running? What congressional district are you running for right now?
So Illinois 14, and the new 14th, it's Lauren Underwood is the incumbent of the 14th district. The new 14th makes up all of my county, Kendall County, parts of Kane County, the lower part, which is Sugar Grove, Big Rock, and parts of Aurora Township, a number of precincts there. And the village of Montgomery. We have a lot of Will County, so it actually expanded in Will County. Wheatland Township, Shorewood area, which is Troy Township, Plainfield Township, and then Joliet, almost all, if not all of Joliet, Lockport, a little bit of Romeoville, so lots of Will County in there. We have about 80% of LaSalle County. Everything north of the river, I tell everyone, if you're north of the river in LaSalle County, you're in the 14th. We have having some spots south of the river, but about 80% of that, and about a small part of both Bureau and Putnam counties. And then the last one is DeKalb County, almost the whole thing except the northern part. So we have everything including DeKalb and Sycamore and all that. So it's actually one of the few least looking gerrymandered districts of the new congressional districts. It's actually more contiguous than most of the rest of them are.
So it relatively didn't change so much over the last year.
Well,
the gerrymandering that took place.
From the current 14th, that went up to McHenry and Lake County. So no more McHenry counties in our district, no more Lake County.
Okay.
Most of Kane went away. We have no DuPage County in it. So those were the big changes. And then the new counties was LaSalle, Bureau, and Putnam. But parts of all those other counties were in the current 14th district. Yeah.
When you look at the county itself, obviously everything changed over the last couple of years for several reasons.
Yeah.
As you've traveled through the county, have you noticed any significant economic changes or even visual changes of what took place in your county?
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone was hit hard by the pandemic, right? And the shuttering of businesses. I mean, our county and our surrounding counties, small businesses, I don't know the numbers, but it was huge. Maybe 30%, 40% literally just went out of business. I know some small business owners who fought, and immediately they said, look, I can't survive if I'm closed down. So they figured out ways to keep open and keep doing their business. In our county, in Kendall County, the sheriff actually came out summer of 2020 and said, we will not enforce the governor's mandates. So you can't force people to follow the mandates. We're not going to enforce it. They're not constitutional. Consequently, we had a lot of restaurants and business who learned how to navigate through the quagmire and keep open and be successful, but many closed. I mean, we have closed storefronts, we have closed restaurant fronts where there used to be restaurants. Things are starting to come back now. New businesses are coming back and opening, but we have a long way to go. And you see that all around. I mean, the whole notion that the government would have the ability to tell you, you're not essential, you're a private business owner, you're not essential, you can't open your doors, or you have to follow these rules even if you don't agree with them. Those things we have to stop. We can't allow that to happen again.
Right. You look at your business ventures you've had in the past, and everything about you seems to be successful. You seem to have a happy life. So what made you take that step and enter truly the political field?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I always tell everyone it started with a race I never intended to get into. And you might be able to relate to this because I hopped into a race as a write-in candidate because I was not going to get into that race. There was a little bit of, let's say, funny business going on with one set of candidates suing the other to get on the ballot, not And I was talking with local people I met through scouting, actually the mayor of the village I live in Oswego. And he was like, well, you should run as a write-in. You can get on the ballot. You'll be a shoo-in automatically in because one set of these candidates or other won't get in there. So that was my foray into local politics in Oswego. At the time, I met up with some people in the Republican Party, asked them to become a precinct committeeman. They appointed me, and that kind of started the whole thing rolling. By the end of the next year, I had figured out that we had some big problems with inside our Republican Party. Like, I was an outsider to the party, but always a constitutional Republican conservative, always trying to figure out who the right person to vote for, the best person that met our goals as a Republic and a Republican Party, and following along. By the end of that year, I'm like, I can't go through another election voting for someone who I don't agree with at all, who's supposedly representing my party. Guess what? That was Mark Kirk, and the rest is history.
Right.
I started getting signatures before you know it. We had 9,200 signatures filed in Springfield, and we collect those in a little over 60 days. And then, went on to finish out that primary, and I learned a lot about Republican Party politics traveling around the state. Went to more than 50 counties in that process, met Republicans at their meetings, at their Lincoln Day dinners, at their breakfasts, etc. And I did win an office on that same day that I was running against Mark Kirk, and that was precinct committeeman. So I became an elected precinct committeeman. And 30 days later, I guess they looked at maybe what I had accomplished locally, and they said, well, maybe we should have you lead our Republican Party in Kendall County. So I was elected chairman of the Republican Party in Kendall County after that. Once that happened, I just haven't stopped. And it's, a lot of people say, well, you've been in a couple big races. Yes, that's true. This is the fourth big race. But you learn things through the process, and I took on the right races against the right people for the right reasons. And I'm proud to have given conservative Republicans a choice in those races. But I learned things, and I went back to work. I rolled up my sleeves, and I worked for my candidates locally. In Kendall County in the last 2.5 years, we've won 13 new Republican office holder seats, mostly in consolidated elections, both in the townships and in the village of Oswego. We swept the entire board with Republican office holders from a crew who was spending and taxing like crazy, gave $23 million of our dollars away to a developer, and then wanted us to pay for it all. So we put an end to that by electing Republican office holders who's actually cut our property taxes twice in the village of Oswego in the last 3.5 years. So you look at the difference between what the establishment politicians were doing locally and got involved and worked hard. And so we did that. Not only that, we picked up other office holders, not Republicans, because they were in races where you can't run as a Republican. So worked about somewhere between that 13 and 20 candidates that in the last 3.5, 4 years in Kendall County, we've turned the tide, even though the counties around us were kind of falling to Democrat takeovers.
So is it more of a red area now than it was in the past?
Well, if you look at the votes for the big elections, everyone still says it's we're turning purple or blue, right?
Okay.
But the thing is when you run Republicans this is what I learned. When you run Republicans as Republicans with our values, you put them out there. We won those elections. These were all local elections, both won after the 2018 elections, which was a disaster for us. That's when we lost the seat, the 14th Congressional District, to Lauren Underwood. Randy Holtgren's the one who lost that. And you look again in 2020, well, we won it, but then we lost it after Election Day. Again, Lauren Underwood ended up taking the seat. But in 2019 and 2021, we come back and we win Republican office holders all around our county. And so it's running on our values, our principles, and talking about them and not being afraid and ashamed to run as a Republican and represent our party and our values.
So do you think that's one of the biggest difficulties the Republican Party has seen in the state, let alone your district?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I now that I'm kind of the quote unquote insider, but let's say there's a big difference between conservative Republicans who are now engaging. We're becoming precinct committeemen. We're becoming leaders in the party. And what I would call the establishment Republicans who don't like to talk about our principles or values. They don't want to talk about our platform like being pro-life. They don't want to talk about conservative family, God-fearing values. They just want to talk about fiscal issues, and then they don't even do a good job at that, right? So we have the moderate Republicans who don't like the fact that we have a platform and a party that's faith-based, that's constitutional-based, that's freedom-based, and they don't want to talk about that. And I think that's a huge mistake, and you see that changing. You see that in my county. We have more conservative Republicans representing the party now than ever. We had that's going on in LaSalle County and Will County. These also happen to be counties that are part of this new 14th Congressional District. So I'm very excited about us being the lead and the leaders of the Republican Party, restoring kind of the Reagan model, where we stand with our principles, we stand for conservatism, and we stand with our values, and we back it up, and we're out there every day.
So when you look at exactly like the corporate world, you identify a problem and you create, whether it's a policy or a rule or something to go against it to turn the tide. Do you think the Republican Party has been able to do that for this cycle, this midterm election cycle?
Well, I see a lot of candidates that I believe are going to be doing that. I'm not convinced that our party leadership, from across the board. I mean, here's the thing about, I think people don't really understand. In the Illinois Republican Party, we have a state central committee. So that's kind of the party that represents the whole state, has a lot of power and influence within its structures. And that party is, the leadership in that party is really not out there talking about our values and our principles like that. But we have a lot of candidates that have emerged in a lot of elections that are doing that. And I think that's our future here. It's the candidates that stand with our values, with our principles, will stand for life, will stand for faith, family, and freedom. And they will lead with that, but we'll also talk about our policies, securing the border, why excessive and grossly negligent spending is a long-term disaster for our children and our grandchildren. It's these things that we have to talk about, and we have to not only talk about them, but in the context that people understand it, because everybody, look at the inflation, you look at the inflationary policies, this is what tax and spend brings you. And everybody knows that's bad. You don't have to explain that to them, they know it's bad. So you need to explain to them why we can turn the tide, stop the inflation, bring back American jobs and American energy, by the way, and do these things. And that we're really the party of the American people, not the other side, right?
Right.
And we need to articulate that better with our voters out there.
So let's expand the focus of where we're looking at right now. Obviously, the state has some terrible issues, and those need to be corrected, and we're on that path. But now let's look as the nation. You're obviously going to be into Washington.
Right.
And I'm just going to say one word. What's your comment if I say Congress? Is that something that you're satisfied with at this point, or what kind of changes need to take place?
Yeah. When you say that one word, and I think it's for me and many people, you have a very bad negative connotation, right? Because of what we've seen going on in Congress, this very nasty vitriol coming out of Congress. And it's not only that, but it's what they do and it's what they don't do, right? Who in America believes we shouldn't have a legitimate, secure border and doesn't believe we shouldn't have a fair and equitable process of immigration? Now, but we don't, and we're not doing that. We're allowing open borders. We're not following the rules. We're allowing cartels and human traffickers to do the worst and awfulest things to the people they're bringing through the system. and we allow that to go on day in and day out, and Congress does nothing about it. And we ask for Congress to build a wall, and they won't fund it. So these are things that are fundamental, basic issues that our Congress needs to do. They go out and spend our money. They give it away to every conceivable thing, including indoctrination of our children in the schools. It has to stop, right? We're spending our children's future and our grandchildren's future now, and they're never going to be able to pay it back. We have to stop that. So everyone in their own household, we all have to run on a budget. We don't have unlimited resources. We can't print money, and we need it to stop in Washington. So I kind of look at it and say, when you say Congress, you know, you get this very negative reaction about what we know has been happening over the last several years, if not decades, in Congress, and we need a change in Congress. We need people who will go there to basically balance the budget, stop the waste, fraud, and abuse, stop the excessive spending, do the things that we need to do, like secure our border, have a safe and secure immigration process. And, you know, these are the things that we can do. We can do them easily and make them happen and get them done once and for all.
So when you look at the government in Washington, or maybe it's not even the government, is there an institution that might have been a focal point or might be leading the breakdown of American society right now that you can point at?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an institution so much, but it's really, you look at these far left groups funded by, you know, multi-trillionaires, George Soros among them, right? And they fund these socialist, CRT, divisive race division, revisionist history, if you will, sexual indoctrination of our children through Common Core and other programs that they're actually doing through Washington, through the bureaucracies. And is it any one thing? No, it's not. It's a lot of people working together in collaboration, I would add, to come together and literally take over these issues and force it upon our children through federal programming, federal funding, tax dollars with strings, and we just need to stop it. I mean, we have to stop the madness. You know, this has been going on for far too long in our schools. It's been going on far too long in Congress, and we need to stop it.
All right. So you have obviously a platform and many issues that you're running for. Is there something in particular that you hold to yourself as a special project or something that you really want to focus on when you get into Congress and you start your political career?
Well, the main thing I say is I'll be relentless in going after the waste, fraud, and abuse in the bills in Congress. We need to get to zero-based budgeting. We need a balanced budget, and we need to cut the waste and the corruption and the things that are not constitutional out of our government. And when we do that, then we need to pay less attention to Washington because they're not trying to manipulate and do everything in our lives, which is everything from trying to, you know, pick winners and losers in the energy sector, you know, green energy, Solyndra, corruption. I mean, every time you windmills, these things, it's like I'm not against anything in the energy sector for that matter, but I'm against the government going in and picking winners and losers and dictating to, you know, the American people how this is going to play out. Shutting down coal plants and shutting down nuclear power. These are things that we cannot afford to happen, at least not at the pace it is. I'm not sure that it's a good thing in the long run anyway, but we need to let the private sector, the American people, and our states let us manage those policies and issues and stop having Washington, you know, pick winners and losers, set the playing field in such a way where it's not level and it's not fair to the marketplace.
And my last question, I guess you could say, is on the Constitution. Do you think that we've directly followed the Constitution as we should over the last decade, let's say, in the United States?
Yeah, no, we've broken away far from it. You see executive fiats both from the president, and you see it at a lot of state levels, but we're talking about Washington here. So you see a lot of executive fiat. You see bills being passed about things that we don't have enumerated powers. So I truly like to look at the enumerated powers in the Constitution. If it's not in there, we shouldn't be doing it out of Washington. That's in the 10th Amendment, that's left to the states and respectively to we the people, right? So the government is far overreaching, and I mean, we already talked about a couple examples. You know, the Department of Education, what they're doing with Common Core and CRT. These are not federal functions. We need to get out of that business. We need to stop it. We need to get out, and what we've seen with the CDC and the mandates for, you know, what I would call medical tyranny. We need to protect the health right of conscience of every individual American. One of the things related to that is when somebody's sick in a hospital, they need to have an advocate there. During the pandemic, people were not allowed someone to go in. People did not have their own daughters, their own sons, their family members could not go in there and see what kind of treatment was being performed, agree or disagree, pick the right path of treatment with the patient, with the doctor. That stopped. We have to stop it. That's not only a huge constitutional overreach, it's something we cannot allow to happen again. We cannot be forced to do medical procedures without the consent of the person who is being treated, or if it's a child, without the consent of the parents, and we need to stop it. I mean, it was outrageous what happened the last 2 years.
James, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it, and good luck with your campaign.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.